We're live. Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Welcome to the 44th annual bi monthly shit show. I like to do these on Friday the 13th. Tonight we're going to be watching the very first Friday the 13th. Um, not the Friday the 13th movie that I would typically reach for. You know, if I just want to pop on a Friday the 13th movie because it's Friday the 13th, this is not usually the one that I reach for. Typically, the one I reach for is part six. Jason lives. He's resuscitated by a lightning blast. It's really stupid and cheesy, but it's got Jason as a zombie, and that's always fun. But I don't actually have that one on Blu-ray yet. I'm waiting for the Steelbook release. So, you know, here we are. We're gonna watch the first one again. Um, it's a Friday the 13th in October. I would be absolutely remiss if I did not do a live commentary for a Friday the 13th film. And I've already done part four. I did that earlier this year. I think we had a Friday the 13th in February. So we did like a winter screening of Friday the 13th. This being October, I mean, it's the month for spooky movies. Although I do consider the Friday the 13th films to be more of like summertime films. They all tend to take place in the summer. It's at a camp. It's a summer camp. It's the imagery is all summertime, people frolicking, skinny dipping, stuff like that. That's not really October imagery to me, and yet it is a horror film. It is Friday the 13th. It's Kismet. I can't ignore it. So we're going to watch Friday the 13th part 1 tonight together with me yapping the whole way through. If you're listening to this later on down the line, because I've posted it to the Pop Culture Mass RSS, then I'll do a quick countdown when I begin the film so that you can hit play at the same time and you can listen to this audio track as you watch the film. It is my intention for people out there to watch the film as you listen to my words synced up. Not that it matters probably for 80% of it, but I'm going to talk about what's happening on screen. You'll be able to hear some of the audio for what's happening on screen. So if you're watching along at home on your Blu-ray player or whatever, make sure you mute that, and so you can listen to this fine audio track. If you're a patron, then you're hopefully watching this on Patreon with no editing at all. If you're watching this live, it's on YouTube, and I'm having to cover the video of Friday the 13th part 1 up, because that's what YouTube makes me do. I'm sorry. But if you're a patron, teamelmy.com /support or patreon.com/teamelmy, become a patron, and you can watch this commentary with the image of my face looking you dead in the eye when I'm not looking down at the screen, watching the film and commenting on the film, and the film will be completely uncovered. Okay, YouTube. So kiss my ass. If I can go to Rumble. Anyway, we can go ahead and get cracking because this is a feature film. I don't want to bloat this video out too long. So why don't we get cracking here with the film? If you are watching along at home on your Blu-ray player, you're going to be listening to this on an RSS feed, audio only, and watching on your television at home. Hopefully you've got it queued up. It's paused at the very beginning. You're ready to go. We're going to start this bad boy in 3, 2, 1. Press play. And you should be seeing the Paramount logo, the mountain, Gulf Western Company. That should all be on your screen right now as you're hearing these words. You know we're synced up. If you see Sean S. Cunningham film, of course, he's the director of the film, kind of the guy who created this whole franchise. And we're going to start off with a nice little opening. Speaking of cracking into the film, I'm trying to use an old belt buckle here to. I don't know where my bottle opener went, but I'm drinking a bottle. It's October, so I'm having an Oktoberfest. What do you want from me? And I'm using an old belt buckle to try to open it. I was successful. Cheers to you guys. It's Friday the 13th. Like the young characters singing Kumbaya right here. I'm going to also have a beer as we do this commentary. It's Friday. It's been a long week, people. A lot of POV shots in this film. Good stuff, I guess, for a horror film. You know, you want to simulate the perspective of the killer, which helps the killer to be in the scene without showing the killer. Of course, big reveal of this film is that it's Pamela Voorhees. It's not the person that you expect. So, the POV shot allows us to kind of be in the space with the killer. It allows us to vicariously view these victims through the eyes of the killer, but it allows the filmmakers to keep hidden the identity of the killer until the very end. If we're looking through the killer's eyes, then as long as the killer doesn't stand in front of a mirror, we will be surprised when we learn the true identity of the killer. And of course, there is something kind of vicarious about looking through the killer's eyes as the killer does these evil and dastardly deeds. I mean, these kids really are singing Kumbaya. I mean, this is some Jesus camp shit right here. I mean, that makes it even worse if you're going to kill these kids. But it actually makes it worse because they're about to they just got done singing to the Lord. They're going to put this guitar down, and these two here are about to go start boning. I don't think Jesus approves of that, is all I'm saying. You're going to get out your little guitar and start singing about hallelujah and shit, and then you're going to pull your dick out not even 2 minutes later after you're done saying amen and whatnot. Pull your dick out. That ain't right. I don't think Christian God loves that. I don't know about the other gods, because I'm not an expert in the various religions. She's at least trying to hey, slow down. We were just singing to the Lord. But then she's on board. She's like, never mind. You know, I'm young. That's the thing about the characters in this. It's a whole series of films, not just this movie. I mean, really, even not just the Friday the 13th series. I mean, really, any slasher film, any horror film, when the characters, I mean, predominantly the characters are young, they're selling horror films to teenagers and young people by and large. So, of course, they're going to depict young people as the protagonists and the victims. It is always weird that it's like young people getting on and then getting killed. But there is something, I think, to pick up a thread I was talking about a moment ago. There's something about seeing the murders through the eyes of the killer places us in the point of view of the killer, and it allows for this vicarious, we get to be in the killer's shoes. We get to it's almost like the audience gets to vicariously enjoy the thrill of the killer's point of it. Like they get to be in the killer's shoes and be doing the killing, which I guess if all the teenagers are young, dumb, just kind of those horror characters are assholes or dipshits or whatever. You're like, well, can't wait till this guy gets a knife to the forehead anyway. Then it's kind of fun. Now he tries to explain himself, and that ought to tell us something about the killer. He's not immediately repulsed or horrified by the killer. So we know the killer's not like an undead, evil, zombie Jason, because you wouldn't even try to make an excuse. This person's like, which one of these boxes has the coffee cups in it? And then killed. The first death we kind of see, you see his bloody abdomen. You imagine he got stabbed. The girl's death you don't see, but I think it's safe to assume that she was just killed there. And I love that breaking glass effect. I mean, there is something quaint about this film. I've got a lot to say about that. But, the guy you get to see the bloody abdomen, you get a little bit of viscera there. It's not over the top. I mean, he's not holding his organs, but you could see a lot of blood pouring down. But again, he was trying to make some kind of excuse oh man, we're just, we were just fooling around, we weren't even finger banging yet, he was trying to to make some kind of excuse that ought to tell you something about the killer, that the killer is possibly an authority figure. Um, it's somebody who he felt like he was more worried about, like, oh, I just got caught making out with this girl, than like, I'm about to be killed. So, um, I think that is a little bit of early evidence as to kind of like who this killer is. As far as like the charm of this film, I think that is one thing about this film that this Friday the 13th has, is charm. Like this opening establishing shot, we know it's Friday, June 13th. It is a summertime film. You can kind of date the film too. Like, if I know that June 13th is a Friday, you kind of figure out what year. Obviously, the film was released in 1980. Did they have the forethought? I don't know if they looked that up and thought, we're going to release this on, in 1980, we should try to release it near film it on June 13th, or say it's June 13th in the opening titles. But you get this establishing shot of this small town. And that's something I really love about the first 2 or 3 Friday the 13th films, is they have this quaint feel to them. Like, this feels very real to me. I feel like there are small towns that still, even now, 40 plus years later, kind of look like this. You might drive past an old gas station. It's not going to work anymore, but sometimes they leave those old pumps out, and it's almost like this sideshow. You drive past it and you're like, I don't even know, those aren't working. What am I supposed to do with those? But you see them. I live in New England, not super rural, but it doesn't take much more than 30 minutes to get out to the real rural area of New Hampshire. And there's a lot of small towns that I pass through that look a lot like this, where there's not a lot going on, but there's some habitation. I mean, there's something quaint about this town being there, especially after this film, when we establish that Jason as an adult is this kind of murderous hillbilly living in the woods. Here, it's not as much. It's still something kind of quaint. I mean, it really captures, to me, it feels like a time capsule of, like, this is what things looked like in 1980. I mean, I wouldn't know. I wasn't alive yet, but even still, I close my eyes and I picture that late 70s, early 80s kind of transition from the 70s pop culture into kind of, obviously this wasn't high 80s pop culture yet. It wasn't like Madonna and shit like that, Cyndi Lauper and stuff, but it's like this real early 80s. This guy's a fucking weirdo. Leave people alone. You'll never come back again. Oh, shut up, Ralph. That's a great performance. It's got a death curse. It's not exactly Shakespeare, but I'll give the guy credit for really playing that up. I mean, he really went kind of ham in a relatively small role. He survives until the second film. He's sort of this like village weirdo alcoholic, but again, it's like this small town. I mean, you see this residence across the street with a couple of old cars parked in the driveway. You get the idea that the place is rural, but it's inhabited. You have a diner with people who work at the diner. Presumably these are kind of normal folks. You've got the truck driver here who's giving our would-be main character, she's not our main character, it's a little bait and switch, is that we're kind of following this girl in the present day, and some of the film language is kind of leading us to believe that she's the main character, but she's about to get whacked out. It is a bait and switch. And so, it's just, I like the idea that there's this small rural, I mean, they're driving past, there's a residence. That's actually a pretty damn nice house they just drove past. Like, that's big. The whole front facade was like all window, like 10-foot windows. I bet it's bright. I bet it's a great room to drink your coffee in. What I'm saying is this whole area, this like Crystal Lake area, is habitated. It's not a big bustling metropolis, but it's got you've got your regulars. It's the type of town where everybody knows everybody. You walk into the diner and they say, "Hey, what's up?" You're there every day. They know your name. It's like Cheers almost, but this kind of small town backwoods version of that. And it's just weird to me that they've got this killer, Jason Voorhees, not Pamela, but they've got this killer who's like living out in the woods right nearby. And somehow nobody in the town has become his victim. He hasn't wandered into anyone's backyard and started like murdering these small town folks. They still kind of live in the shadow of Camp Blood, as this guy's saying. His dialogue is about the murders that occurred there, how the place is haunted or cursed or whatever. And the weirdo Ralph from a moment ago, he's also establishing the fact that Camp Blood has a death curse. You shouldn't go there because if you do, you'll fall victim to this curse. And sort of establishes the sense of danger, but also kind of gives you an idea that the people who live in this small town are also kind of superstitious about it. They maybe harbor some of these beliefs themselves. And in fact, he, the truck driver, Elston, I'm guessing maybe that's his last name, Mr. Elston there, is unwilling to drive her all the way. I don't know if he's spooked out by the camp or if he's just, that's not his route and he's going another way. But he drops her off right in front of a cemetery. Again, this is kind of foreshadowing, right? This is this imagery that causes foreboding and dread, because we see her like walking past all of these headstones in this image, this kind of lonely rural cemetery, which you'll see plenty of if you drive out through the country. And here we cut to the rest of the group. We see the other teenagers that are waiting to get murked. But the filmmakers, I'm going to try not to bog this commentary down with any trivia. If you've seen any of my other commentaries on the Pop Culture Mass YouTube or heard any of my other commentaries on Patreon, if you're a patron, then you already know. I mean, there's a lot of trivia, especially for an old film like this. It's a cult classic. I don't want to repeat anything that you're going to get from Wikipedia, because then there's really no value in this commentary for you as the listener. So I do want to provide some value where I'm kind of deconstructing the film a little bit. I'm talking a little bit about like film language and stuff, but it's not too technical, because I'm going to say fuck every now and again too, and make fun of some shit. But I'm going to try to add something new. But it's a well-known piece of trivia that this film was that man is sexually confused. I'm just telling you that right now. It's the early 80s. It's okay. It's allowed. But I don't know if he's macho because he's out there with an axe and he's like working hard to cut up the firewood, but he's also got this bandana that says he's open for business. And that is the back door. He's open for business. He's also wearing jean shorts, which I'm not sure. Again, I wasn't around in 1980, so I don't know if culturally those are not like a homosexual flag that says, hey, I'm a gay dude who wants to meet other gay dudes and have gay sex. But to me, in today's day and age, I look and I see jean shorts and I think either that or he's a Florida fan. And I do like gay people. I like gay people a lot, but I don't much care for Florida fans. So hopefully he's gay and not a Florida fan. Although this is Camp Crystal Lake. This is like rural New York, I believe. So he should not be a homo. Just kidding. He's not a Gators fan. As I was saying, the filmmakers of this film, at least the guys who kind of created the Friday the 13th franchise, they are pretty. Sean S. Cunningham and oh god, what's the fucking writer's name? I don't know. I'm gonna remember when I'm done with this. I always forget an important cast member's name or filmmaker's name until the end. But the writer and director of the film, Cunningham, they're pretty open about the fact that they were looking at the success of Halloween a few years earlier, a movie that made degrees of magnitude more than its budget. It was an insanely profitable film. Still only made like $75 million, but when you only spend a couple $100,000 and you get back 70 million, I mean that's a very good rate of return. And so they're pretty obvious, or they're pretty open about the fact that they looked at Halloween as a inspiration, as sort of the inspiration might be nice. That might be saying like you were inspired by something, so you went and created this other piece of art that maybe you know, pays homage or owes some kind of debt to a previous piece of art. I don't think they were viewing this film as particularly artful or like an expression of anything. They were trying to cash in. They're very open about that, so I'm not insulting anyone. They were trying to cash in on the popularity of Halloween, and they're open about the fact that they used Halloween as a template. Although I think it is interesting that despite the many similarities that we'll see in this film between this and Halloween, you know, you've got the group of young people. I think Sean Cunningham himself has come right out and said that just as in Halloween, he just touched her in a sensual way. Is he not gay? I'm pretty sure he's gay, but he just kind of gave her like a sensual touch. That I don't know about. Again, we had this kind of like killer's eye view, and I mean, those aren't huge trees. I'm not sure that you would be able to effectively hide behind those trees and not be seen by these young people here. So one thing that's interesting, despite all of the similarities between this film and Halloween, is that Halloween had a more suburban vibe. Obviously, it's happening in this suburban Haddonfield where everything is familiar, right? I mean, if you grew up in suburbia, you sort of know that neighborhood you've lived in all your life. You know all your neighbors. Everybody's lived there your whole life. It's not, there's no one new. It's a community, much like the small town in this film is like a community of individuals who know each other. These are all outsiders that come in. None of these kids are known. They're not local kids. But in Halloween, you know, you have this, it's not urban in the sense that like Manhattan is urban, Boston is urban, but it's you know, Halloween is more urban in the sense that it's taking place in like a suburban environment. There's shopping malls, there's neighborhoods, there are schools. It's more densely populated. There are, you know, houses one next to the other in this neighborhood, and you know, it's something that's very familiar for these, you know, young teens. They drop their guard in Halloween. You know, they're at home, like they're not thinking that they're being stalked. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is a little bit, but here, you know, you have a sort of a, well, that was dangerous as fuck. That dude's got balls, because he could have run that fucking thing like straight through her, and you ain't getting laid if you put an arrow right through the chick you trying to bone. I'm just saying, it's a bold move when it works. If it doesn't work, you're not gonna get any of that. Let's see how it works out for him. Because she seems like she's a little upset, which I would be too if you fired an arrow in my general direction and it passed by me by 4 inches. I'd be pretty fucking pissed. But it's interesting that there's our would-be main character. We kind of were thinking she's the main character. She's out hitchhiking, which was like the thing to do in the 70s. I feel like in the 80s, it was like, oh, never hitchhike, never hitchhike. There was a quick turnaround, and it must have been the result of this film. Like everybody watched this and said, oh, wait, if you hitchhike, you can get stabbed to death by the crazy person who picks you up. So I always thought it was interesting that the Friday the 13th movies, particularly the first several, take place in a very rural environment. It's sort of like where Halloween is more city-based, at least small city, suburban city. This is very rural. So, you know, like one in Halloween, it might represent like the fear of, you know, the fear of this more densely packed environment that a killer could kind of just kind of fold right in, you know, and just kind of hide in plain sight, right? The idea that there could be like a killer in your neighborhood, in this place where you feel safe, your own home, you know, a place where you would feel safe walking, even at night, even alone. That there would be this kind of like almost wolf in sheep's clothing, like he's hiding there. In the woods, you know, it's a little bit different. It's like, well, It's the woods. So it's not like your neighborhood. You may not feel safe walking there in the middle of the night, but it is sort of like the fear that there's maybe someone out there in the wilderness. There's some like feral, there's some feral like man child that is just this murderous mongoloid in the woods there, and that you might stumble into his territory and become a victim because you got too close. So, it's sort of an interesting thing where Halloween is like this fear of like the dangers that might lurk in this urban environment. I always felt like Friday the 13th was the flip side of the coin. It was sort of the yin to Halloween's yang. And it's this idea that, there is this vast world out there and that you're far away from help. You're far away from the safety and comforts of home, and that you might fall victim to someone who's hiding out there as a result. And it's so I think it's a very interesting approach, even though they're open about the fact that they're copying Halloween. It's still kind of, it presents an interesting duality, in my opinion. And this bitch about to get whacked. Again, this tells us something about the killer. She got in the car with the killer, right? The killer can drive. The killer has a license. The killer, and she just kind of. I mean, I love that she just sort of takes it. It's one of these things. I mean, that's a pretty good effect for 1980. I got to say, like, there's no CG. That's a good throat slitting effect. But there is something weird about like kind of standing there and then getting your throat slit and then like still kind of standing there, like not grabbing at the wound, writhing, not really even screaming very loud, just kind of going, like the way people die in these films, it's very convenient. They have to die somewhat quietly. Because if you just scream like, oh my God, he's got, oh my God, like you just scream, then everyone hears you. They have to die kind of like, oh, they have to do that sound where like no one else really hears them die. They just kind of go, ugh, and they don't scream until there's an axe in their head. So she really doesn't scream. She's just kind of like, no, no. And then, and she could have screamed. She was out in the woods. There was no one to hear her. But then also she has to like die inside the frame, right? Like, so it's this knowledge that I have to die somewhere between here and here, because that's where the camera is pointing. And so like I can't die over here. I can't move around a whole lot and die over here. I gotta stay in front of the camera so that the effect that Tom Savini worked so hard on, the throat slitting effect, that can be seen clearly by the viewer. And again, it's obvious to us that the killer is someone who young people would not suspect. It is someone that you'd get in the car with, that Pamela Voorhees was out driving around. Like, she didn't know that the hitchhiker girl was going to be there on her way to Camp Blood. I mean, did she know when she picked her up that she was even on her way to Camp Crystal Lake? The impression in this film that I have is very much that Pamela Voorhees is unhinged. We see that at the end. She's mentally ill. But we also see that she's not an indiscriminate killer. She's not murdering any person that she comes across in the way that Jason Voorhees does in later films, where Jason will kill any human being he encounters. Pamela seems to have lived mostly a normal life for the last 20 years. We know that there have been a few decades elapsed since the killings that we saw at the very beginning of the film. We also know that the killer's gone dormant. It's not like more people around Crystal Lake in that area have been turning up dead. I mean, it's not like a serial killer situation that they have. So you get the idea that probably Pamela Voorhees encounters people every single day. She's been alive for the last 20 years. She surely pays a mortgage. She surely goes grocery shopping. She probably goes to restaurants, maybe the diner from time to time. She's probably known amongst the town people. And she picked up the hitchhiker. She picked up that girl that she just murdered, whose throat she slit. And would she have known when she picked the girl up that the girl was a camp counselor? She seems like Pamela really only wants to kill people who are associated with Camp Crystal Lake. which is why she's been dormant for 20 years. The camp's been closed. She hasn't had to kill anybody. So you don't get the impression that she just kills, like she drives around trying to find random hitchhikers so that she can murder them in the woods when they like do the Chinese fire drill, which is excellent. I very much feel like she did kill that woman because she knew she was on the way to Camp Crystal Lake, but she would have had to have picked her up and talked to her in the car to know that she was a future camp counselor at Crystal Lake to even murder her. So, we know that about the killer. The killer must be someone who looks fairly normal. Therefore, we can start to compile some suspects. I mean, we don't really know who the killer is, but we know that they're probably native to the area. They know the area. They drive. They're unassuming. You could pass them by in the street. You could pull up next to them at a red light and not be horrified in the way that, like, if you encountered Jason in Friday the 13th Part 4, you'd be horrified. I mean, he's this big bulking dude with a very much looks like a mongoloid, and he's terrifying. He's covered with blood. He's killing everybody. That was an actual snake murder we just witnessed. Killed a real live snake, which some people might have a problem with, but I do not mind because I absolutely do not like snakes. Smaller snakes, I don't really, I don't mind. I wouldn't go out of my way to kill a snake unless it was poisonous and it was like indoors. I got to kill this venomous snake. But I like the machete. It's a little bit of, feels like a little bit of foreshadowing since that's kind of Jason's favorite implement. Feels like foreshadowing for the next decade of Friday the 13th films. But I absolutely hate snakes, and large reptiles are the one things that are worse than like your medium-sized snake. The giant, like the fucking pythons, like 20-foot constrictors and shit like that. Absolutely keep those fucking things away from me. And alligators and crocodiles. Those are also like large reptiles that are completely terrifying to me. Horrifying animals. I don't like looking at photographs of them. They're terrifying to me. Absolutely just terrible, terrible creatures. Kevin Bacon, look how young he looks. Look how fresh-faced. I don't think he's even grown a single facial hair yet. That man, that's an image of Kevin Bacon before he has ever shaved his face, even for the first time. Which, when you think about it, does make it kind of weird, like watching all these people get it on. Because, I don't know. I guess they're 18. They might be 18. Let's say they're 18. They're camp counselors. But maybe they're 16 or 17. That makes it a little bit weird, like watching them get it on. So hopefully we'll just pretend they're all 18, 19. That way, when they have some sex, you don't have to feel creepy. Because there probably are some boobies in this. Again, this is a movie that the whole point is to titillate. I mean, they're trying to cash in. This is not high art, which is why we're watching this on the shit show and not Movie Mess. And so, yeah, their audience, I think, is pretty obviously like teenage boys, mostly teenage boys. And so, how do you get them to tune in? A few grisly murders, some titties, definitely throw in some titties and some bathing suits. We've seen a few bikinis already. We're going to see a little bit of more, drinking and premarital sex. And that's kind of what the teenage crowd is into. And I'm not a teenager, but that's what I'm into as well. So cheers to you. If you like movies with a little bit of murder and a little bit of titties, Friday the 13th is probably your jam. Again, something quaint about these early Friday the 13th films that even I think is lost by the fourth one. I think as they begin to focus more and more on the spectacle of Jason's killings, I think they lost some of this. Like, this guy's just fucking hiding in it. Like, this guy's an alcoholic. I think that much is obvious. And so you wonder, what the fuck is he doing in their cabinet with the Campbell's soup? That's fucking weird. But let's keep in mind he's an alcoholic. What's he doing? Why did he break into the cabin? Yeah, he wants to warn them about the death curse. But look, if he really took the death curse seriously, he would also stay the fuck out of Camp Crystal Lake. Take your own advice, dog. But the reason he's in the pantry is because he's an alcoholic. He's looking for booze. He's wondering maybe they keep the bottles of rum in the pantry here. Maybe they got a 12-pack in the pantry here that they haven't refrigerated yet. And I can get in on that. I can take a little nip off that bottle of rum, Captain Morgan, that they got in the cabinet. I don't think he found anything, but man, he sure scared the shit out of Alice there. There's our actual MC right there, is Alice. And you can see that they take these horror tropes seriously. I mean, it wasn't even a trope yet. That's kind of the funny thing, is like, this is the film that sort of made it a trope, made some of the tropes tropey, because it took some of the things that Halloween did that were novel in 1977 and sort of codified them. Like, your main character tends to be a little bit more chaste and, I don't know, bookish. She's not the slut, right? All of the sluts are going to get killed, unfortunately, for sluts and people who like sluts. So if you like sluts, then, pour one out for the hoes in this film, because they're all going to get killed. But the main character, the survivor, the final girl, it was codified that she would be more like, look at her. She's got a long sleeve shirt on. It's the middle of June, lady. You're at a summer camp. She's wearing a blouse with long sleeves. She's got the blouse tucked into jeans that are, fashionable for the time, but not like overly revealing. Some of the other girls dress a little bit differently. They're dressed a little bit maybe more casually. She's dressed like she's going to church, honestly. Maybe not the blue jeans. I know a lot of churches don't want you to wear blue jeans. A lot of people want to dress a little bit more, but she's still like, she looks like she could go to church, where these other kids look like they're on summer vacation. They're throughout the film going to reveal a little bit more and also engage in a little bit more sexual activity. And so it's this film, sort of by copying earlier films, it sort of codifies the tropes that nowadays, 40 years later, we really kind of expect. You sort of expect the final girl to behave a certain way and to be a certain way. And we kind of relate to that final girl. Fuck is that? This is too far north for that to be a large reptile like an alligator. So I'm not going to freak out. That was like a fucking otter or some shit. I wasn't even an otter. Otters don't live in fucking New York, do they? I don't know. I'm not a fucking zoologist, but maybe it was a beaver. I bet beavers live up there. That was probably a beaver. I don't freak out over beavers. The beavers are fine. They build dams. They, whatever. They supplied a nickname for the vagina. I'm all good with beavers as an animal, as a creature. I don't feel like beavers be like snatching people's kids and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like fucking crocodile coming out of the fucking water, trying to snatch somebody up who's small. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Anytime the camera moves like this, you have to wonder if we're viewing things through the killer's eye. And that did look like a killer POV shot, but it couldn't have possibly been. This character would notice the killer. He does seem to be, he noticed something. There's somebody moving around up there. And so, will he meet his end by investigating? Again, another horror trope that exists out of necessity. You don't have deaths peppered throughout a horror film unless someone naively investigates. They go, well, what is that? What was that sound? Who is that person? Let me walk over there and get killed. But it allows us to pace the film with murders throughout, so that you can witness things. It doesn't have to be like everybody dies at the end after an hour and a half of being bored, which would probably be more realistic. Like the killers, it's not like I'm going to kill a whole bunch of people over the course of 13 hours. It's like, if you're going to murder a bunch of people, it's usually pretty quick. Damn, he looks young. It's an awful haircut. It's a god-awful haircut. But this is the guy, it had to have been surreal watching this in the theater and seeing Kevin Bacon on screen in front of you and not knowing who the fuck that guy is. He's just another nameless young person about to get slaughtered. It's only in hindsight that we're able to look at that and be like, fuck, that's Kevin Bacon, man. He was in a bunch of other fucking movies. He was in a bunch of shit. over the last 40 years. Everybody fucking knows who Kevin Bacon is. At the time, it's just another dude. So next time you go see a low budget horror film, ask yourself, like, which of these actors is going to become tremendously famous while all of the rest of them fade into obscurity. Never know their names. I don't know that girl's name. I could look it up on IMDb, I'm sure. I don't know her name. I don't know the actress's name. Kevin Bacon, you know him. Again, there's a lot of establishing shots of like nature here, which of course makes sense. They're in the woods at a summer camp. They're cabins and stuff, but these establishing shots are pretty well done because they show this, they sort of set the tone because they're showing this it's not serene nature shots. It's the thunder and the lightning, and the wind is blowing the lake, and the lake is choppy and tumultuous, and the trees are blowing, the leaves are blowing, and the things are moving in a way that it's obvious that there's like a storm coming. So again, it's like film language to tell us there's a storm coming, there's something bad that's coming. Maybe it's already there. Maybe that dude in the jersey who walked into the cabin to investigate, maybe he's already dead. He's already dead. But I think it's an interesting way to use an establishing shot to not only establish or communicate the location, which is typically what the establishing shot is used for. It's to tell you where action is taking place that you're about to see, but it also sets a mood, a vibe to let you know that, the sun is going down, it's getting dark, there's trouble coming, right? These young people are just enjoying the time of their lives, just 70s, making out. Nobody's worried about shit. They got birth control. Ain't nobody worried about getting pregnant. They don't know what AIDS is yet. Yeah, it's 1980. AIDS existed, but come on, man. These people aren't watching fucking CNN 24 hours a day because that shit didn't exist either. They're not on a 24-hour news cycle. Nobody knew shit about AIDS in 1980. These young people aren't worried they're going to fuck around and get pregnant or get AIDS. They're just like, dude, it's fucking all good. I'm dumping loads all over everything, and nobody's getting pregnant. Nobody's getting HIV. Nobody's fucking going home to go to the doctor and take retrovirals or whatever. I don't know what they call them, drugs, the ones that suppress HIV, which didn't exist in 1980. But these kids, what I'm trying to say with all that is these kids are having the time of their lives. It's carefree, nothing to worry about. They're young, they're nubile, they're supple, they got good bodies. Look at Kevin Bacon. You saw him take his shirt off. Look at that man. Anyway, they're just having the time of their lives, but shit's about to get real because the sun went down and the lake was choppy. And that is an artistic way of saying it's not just the lake that's getting chopped up, right? Some of y'all motherfuckers getting chopped up. In fact, all of y'all motherfuckers getting chopped up, except for the broad who covered her arms, okay? She ain't got no tattoos, and she covered up her arms. She's had sex one time, only with one dude, and it was a boyfriend she dated in high school for all 4 years, right? She's chaste as fuck. These two, not chaste as fuck, and they're about to pay the ultimate price for it. Again, we're codifying things that we've come to expect in the intervening decades. Get a little lightning effect there. Very romantic. I mean, who doesn't want to be shacked up when it's pouring out and thunder and lightning outside? I mean, why not? People don't have anything else to do. Think about that. That's Kevin Bacon butt right there. That's bacon booty right there. She was just squeezing a whole ass handful of that bacon booty. And that was for you guys. They get away with filming Kevin Bacon's booty in a movie when nobody knows who Kevin Bacon is. You know how much you have to pay for a shot of Kevin Bacon's ass these days? Obviously, our homeboy is dead. Another victim of the slit throat. He died silently. I mean, we were positioned outside the cabin the whole time. And, if he'd been killed in a violent conflict and a confrontation that was violent, they're wrestling for the night. I mean, there would have been noise. Things would have been knocked over. So when Kevin Bacon and his lady came into the cabin, they would have seen There was a whole scene there. Everything was fucked up. All the shit was knocked over. It wasn't. Everything was in perfect working order. And the killer is somehow strong enough to get the dead body up onto the top bunk. It's not like he laid down on the top bunk and then got his throat slit. He went in to investigate. There is your obligatory booby. Get our R rating, but the teenagers appreciate it. It's worth that R rating. Yeah, you make less money on an R-rated film traditionally than you would on a PG-13 movie. So a lot of big studios, a lot of like your Disneys and stuff like that. That's why they make all of the Avengers movies PG-13. And that's why they had to make Deadpool over at Fox before it got bought. And who knows what Deadpool 3 is going to be like, if it's going to be any good. They keep saying they're going to have it rated R, but like the sweet, sweet PG-13 money. It's PG-13 is like the new PG. It's ridiculous. It's very hard to tell. Like it's PG-13, so I don't know. It's like some cartoonish violence with like Thanos or whatever. I don't know. These movies make a little bit less because they're R-rated, but to me, it's worth it. As an adult who really just doesn't discriminate based on the rating of a film, yeah, I guess you're not going to have as many 15-year-olds buying tickets because it's rated R. They got to fucking sneak in or whatever. But I got to tell you, there's something about being young too, and like the forbidden fruit of having these like R-rated horror films. You know, for me, being a young person in the late 80s, early 90s, having this whole, 9 or 10, I think it was 8 or 9 Friday the 13th movies that were available at the time. One of the most creative kills coming up right here. He's like, well, what do you do after sex? Smoke a joint. Yeah. I personally would prefer an Italian sandwich, I gotta say. I don't mind joints, mind you. But like after sex, towel the boys off downstairs, dry yourself off downstairs, put the undies back on, go out to the kitchen topless. And that is just a creative way, if not impossible, but a creative kill right there. And let's give him credit for choosing this kind of calm moment. He's just sparking up a doobie. As I said, I'd be eating an Italian sandwich, in the kitchen, topless, just undies on, like put on the boxer briefs and go out and like pull that Italian sandwich out of the fridge from earlier that day. Oof, that's the move. I wish I had one in my fridge right now. I'd push pause on this bitch and go eat that Italian sandwich. But you really got to give credit to, like, a lot of people complain this is a boring Friday the 13th. This one's the most boring one. It doesn't have Jason Voorhees as the killer. And, I have to agree. There's a lot. The pacing of this film is a lot slower than other Friday the 13th. But like, let's not sleep on the arrow through the back of the neck, erupting from like the throat, and then, the hand kind of holding the top of his head down. And then the coup de grace to me is the spurts, like the blood spurts out of the neck as he's dying, which is really kind of great. You kind of expect a quick, sort of like it shows the thing come through real fast, a little bit of blood, and then cuts away real quick. Even in an R-rated film, that's happens a ton in these films, is just show you just enough and then cut away. And some of that you think is to, increase the suspense. Like, don't show you everything. And maybe that's true. But I think a lot of times the reason they cut away quick is like the special effects aren't that great. And practical effects from older films, like, sometimes they look pretty fucking bad. This is all pre-CG. We got to keep in mind when this film came out. That, on the other hand, that Kevin Bacon's death, that was an incredible effect. Not only was it like, it looked real with the arrow like protruding, not super fast, but like actually like kind of digging its way out. But then the blood that followed, because you got to think, it creates a puncture wound, but it's, again, it's a puncture wound, it's an open wound. There would be this gush of blood that we saw there that really, I've never seen anybody actually stabbed through the neck, thank Jesus. But you got to think, like, that was an incredible effect. That's an effect that you linger on as a filmmaker. Stay there with that effect, because it was really well done. It'd be a waste of the effect to cut away quickly. And it really does help punctuate these slower moments of the film. I love the interior shots here of the shower. She goes to take a shower. Of course, in a horror film, they have sex. They have to have sex because you want to kill them without remorse. So they have to be evil sinners who have just had premarital sex. But then they have to split up. So the girl always says, "Say, well, I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to go rinse your nut out off of my inner thigh." And they have to split up. They're easier to kill, and it draws the murders out to have them split up and go their separate ways. And then one gets murdered, and then the other one gets murdered, and that gives us like 20 minutes of suspense. But I love the interior shots here. It's so minimalist. There's no decor, but it looks like every camp I've ever been to. It looks like every camp shower I've ever seen in real life. It's just drab. It's these old shower curtains that have probably been in use since before your mother was born. And it's all this like bare wood construction. You gotta love the shadow. That axe looked like it was like 50 yards away from her. And she just turns around and, okay, we got our first scream of the movie halfway through. Then we cut to like that axe is buried in that chick's fucking face. Wow. We cut back to it. That's pretty impressive too. Like ballsy to cut back to the effect. We knew she got hacked by the axe. We saw the shadow of the axe. We saw her turn around. We saw the axe itself, and then we saw her scream. We know she died. It's sort of like the first girl that got killed in that flashback scene showing the original murders of Camp Blood. We don't actually see the girl die. It freeze frames as she's screaming. We presume she was murdered, but we don't see the effect. Here we're actually seeing we're getting into, more towards a climax of the film. We need to see some of the viscera. And also, I don't know what the budget of this film is. I could have done the research, but again, it feels like trivia that I would be providing to you, not actual value. So I don't know the budget of this film, but I can't imagine it was very much. They're doing the shoestring budget Halloween thing, trying to make millions of dollars back in return. They have a bunch of no-name actors. Kevin Bacon notwithstanding, he was no-name at the time. This is all kind of shot on location in a cabin. There's no huge special effects. All the money had to go towards the makeup and blood effects and stuff. I want to say that's probably where like a good chunk of the budget went. And it shows. It really shows. I mean, if you watch a lot of horror films of this era, practical effects horror films, I know nowadays any 17-year-old with CapCut and Photoshop can like do some pretty impressive stuff on the computer. But I have a lot of respect for this practical effects era, and you really can see like Tom Savini is a master here, and you can see it because I've seen a lot of these like early horror films, early 80s horror films and practical effects stuff, and it's not fantastic. This is really, really good. Axe to the face. I mean, that thing was buried in that poor girl's face. It's terrible. Another, it's a slow night at the diner. You got this lady. She probably went to high school with Pamela Voorhees, right? She would know Pamela Voorhees. Pamela Voorhees could come into that diner and not be treated any differently than anyone else. That is kind of the wonderful thing about her being the killer. It's a little bit of a reverse Norman Bates thing, reverse Psycho thing. I'll talk about that maybe when we get to the end and we do the reveal, but now it's really coming down outside. I mean, Mother Nature has really turned against our characters. And again, it's reminiscent of my theme that, or my hypothesis of the theme that, we're really dealing with nature here. It's a human being doing the murders, but with the Friday the 13th, we're really dealing with that like base human nature, that like murderous instinct. So we're still dealing with nature. It's an aspect of human nature, but it lives out in the wild. It's uncivilized. It's hidden away. It's the type of thing that you have to accidentally stumble across and encounter. And that way it's kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You sort of have to be in the wrong place at the right time, I guess. But again, I love the interior shots here of this shower area. Just so reminiscent of every camp experience I've ever had. everything's so unfinished. It's just this bare wood construction. It's like minimalist, but not even like as an artistic design choice. It's minimalist in the sense that like we're just gonna fucking throw this thing together as quick and cheap as we can, and if we finish it with drywall, then when it fucking rots, we're gonna have to pull the drywall out to replace it. If we just keep it bare, then it's pretty fucking easy to replace the wood parts when they need replacing. So I just love this. It's like just so unfinished, just shack thrown up in the woods. But they still have plumbing. I mean, they got running water, they got a sink, they got showers, but it's just super minimalist. That's creepy. Like that shot, I always love a shot where it's like a high key lighting, really high contrast between the very bright light and the very dark shadows, usually achieved by a single bright light source. You can place it typically overhead because that's how lighting works in buildings, even ramshackle buildings like this, but it's like just enough to see those fingers on the curtain. Great shot. I mean, I know that this is not a piece of art. It's hard not to appreciate even a little bit of accidental artistry, though. And to me, that was it. I know they're doing the Halloween thing, right? Like Jamie Lee Curtis in the beginning of Halloween would notice Michael Myers and he would disappear when she'd look back or whatever, and she'd be like, did I really see somebody there, or am I hallucinating? Again, this is another thing where, did she see somebody there? I don't know, but we did, as the audience, we know there's someone there because they just killed her friend. The axe to the face. Great shot of those fingers. Just the fingers just shows us enough of the killer. Again, the killer is a mystery to us if this is our first time watching the film. Imagining you're in a theater in 1980 watching this, you've got no idea who the killer is. And you're imagining it's a guy. It's a little bit of a twist to find out that it's a woman doing all of the killing. But look, I'm not sexist. I'm here to tell you that women can do shit too. Like, why does it always have to be a dude that does all the murdering? You ladies out there are perfectly capable of murdering some motherfuckers. You can slit some throats. Why not, right? Why not? Again, nature is just really against these characters. Guy can't even get his truck out there. He's got to get a ride from the local cop. It's not going to end very well for him. But it is what it is. More point of view shots. I got to say, no need for a steady cam when you're doing point of view shots, right? I mean, maybe you need a bit of a steady cam. Simulating the person creeping up to the window, watching the next victim. We even get that iconic Friday the 13th, like, that sound. That really comes to define the Friday the 13th films. It's a creepy sound. They found it here early on, and they use it early and often. They use that sound. Cheers to you if you're freshening up like I am. This one's a can, so I didn't have to use the old belt buckle. This is Jacko, which is perfectly appropriate for this time of year. Although I can't say that I love the pumpkin flavored beers. This came as a part of a 12 pack. It's like a blend. It's just, I don't know. Cheers to you if you like pumpkin flavored beers. I don't dig them. My father-in-law loves them. I don't know. They're too, like, I like pumpkin bread. I like pumpkin muffins. Like, I like pumpkin pie. I don't know. Keep it out of my beer. I don't need to mix the two, right? There's a lot of stuff that I like. I don't need it in my beer. I like tacos. I like General Tso chicken. I don't need it in my beer, right? I can drink a beer with my General Tso chicken. Often drink a beer with my tacos. I don't need it. I like pumpkin stuff. I don't need my beer to be pumpkiny, but whatever. It's appropriate for the time of year, so I'm going to do my best to enjoy it. It's been a long week, so. My BAC will enjoy it. Something about the dark, something about the rain just makes people easy prey, easy pickings. And, of course, as people, as the killer begins to kill more and more, there's fewer people left, and it's sort of a divide and conquer kind of strategy where you can pick people off one by one. You don't face much resistance that way. Because again, we're considering Pamela Voorhees as the killer. She's like a 60-year-old lady. Like, I don't know a lot of 60-year-old ladies that could physically overpower me. And that's not, I'm not trying to brag like I'm Billy Badass over here, because I'm not. I'm just an average dude. But as an average dude, there are not a lot of 60-year-old women that could overpower me and thus murder me. So like in a direct confrontation, you're not getting me. You might get me like Kevin Bacon if I'm not looking and I'm sparking up the doobie and you get me from behind real quick. All right, cool. That's a good way to do it as a 60-year-old lady. So I think even the strategy of like the Pamela Voorhees characters, the killers, is the right strategy. It's a believable and realistic, mostly. I still have to suspend my disbelief a little bit for like the guy in the jersey whose throat she slit. Like, I don't know if she snuck up on him. We don't see his actual death. We just see the corpse with the throat slit. But the idea that she's sort of utilizing this territory to her advantage. She knows the camp much better. She worked at the camp. So she knows the camp much better than these teens do. She uses this knowledge to her advantage, and she uses various tools. Like she uses the elements, it's lures people out, get them out into the open, turn the lights on real bright. And then I don't know what she just did to that girl. We'll probably see the aftermath. It's another kind of trope. Like you don't always see the death, but when you don't see the death, you hear the scream and they die off screen. You often see the aftermath as some kind of surprise. They're hung up on a wall somewhere, and it's supposed to be a shock for the characters, and it might also be a surprise for us as the audience too, if we're not expecting them. And somebody, the character comes in and like opens the door, and they're like hung up on the wall or something, and it's, oh shit, fucking dead person there, and the character's like, oh shit, there's a fucking dead person there, and it's very synchronous. But it is a good way to depict Pamela's murders, because you don't imagine a 60-year-old woman. And they sort of cheat with Jason in the sequels because they make him this. I mean, I'm sorry if I offend anybody. I don't know if this is even going to get this. I'm going to say this, and it's probably even going to get this shit taken down from YouTube, motherfuckers. But he's got the retard strength, right? What do they say in The Ringer? What does Brian Cox say in The Ringer? Brian Cox said it first, so don't get mad at me. Monster tard. They make him this giant. He's got the retard strength, right? He's like this giant, like man child, but he is indestructible and he's super powerful. And that sort of like turns into their cheat code, where no one can really stand up to him because nobody is strong enough to overpower him. He's like this grown man. He's like 6'4" and 250 pounds of pure beef. And he's dealing with a whole bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds who are 170 pounds. I like how they find the axe just kind of like tucked in. What a creepy way to do it too. Like you could have left a severed head there or something, but just like, yeah, this is the axe that I'm going to dig it out of this person's head so I can go tuck it in bed like it's her own child. Like that's sort of foreshadowing that Pamela Voorhees is like killing for her child. Like it's this warped revenge thing for the child that she lost, the boy who died, because the revenge as seen in the axe becomes a metaphor for her revenge. It's the physical implement by which she takes her revenge. She tucks it in. It's like this proxy for Jason. She like lovingly put the axe head right on the pillow. She tucked the axe in. It's creepy as fuck for the surviving characters to find. Psychological. She's getting inside their head. She's terrifying them. Again, making them easier prey. But also, like, it sort of becomes this symbol for her own boy. She's exacting this revenge to fill this gap of like losing her son. And it's really kind of, I don't know, viewed in that light, it's really kind of You just almost feel bad for this person's mental illness. Like, yeah, she's murdering, and that's not right, but um, it's like this deep sense of loss that has like driven her to this murderous madness. And as a parent myself, it's just like you I don't know, you can kind of identify a little bit with the really horrific lengths that you might go to if you thought you were acting on behalf of your children or in their best interests. It's really pretty insane how far you'll go for your kids. And she's mentally unwell enough to think that she's doing this for her boy, who she thinks is dead. We're going to find out in the sequel he's not, but too bad she couldn't learn that 20 years ago. Might have avoided all of this killing if they could have just reunited in Jason's weirdo shack in the woods. Whatever. I think the explanation for Jason's return is pretty contrived. Whatever. Gave us a lot of entertaining films. But it's an interesting way to look at this film. Again, you kind of have to appreciate that Pamela Voorhees is probably quite insane, which we're going to see from some of her dialogue here coming up, but calculating enough too. Like, she's crazy, she's mentally ill, but also has enough strategy to know, like, let's pick them off one by one. She's sort of doing the SEAL Team 6 thing here, where it's like, I'm not going to storm the cabin when they're all together and there's 4 dudes in there that could all overpower me as a 60-year-old lady or 58-year-old lady or whatever. If she catches them by surprise and takes them one by one over the course of the day, then she can utilize her own advantages of like knowing the terrain and knowing the camp really well and knowing places to hide and being able to follow people discreetly. So it's at least they make an attempt to make that part believable. Again, why she would be able to like overpower grown dudes, I don't know. But we also see that she's unassuming enough that characters let her get close. Characters aren't terrified. You see Jason Voorhees from 50 yards away, you bolt, you start running. He's terrifying. He's clearly there to kill you. But with Pamela, she's just a 6-year-old lady. She's like any of these characters' moms or grandma, it's like, oh, grandma, what is she doing? She's baking cookies. She's not fucking slitting throats. Nope, she's slitting throats. Bitch ain't baking no cookies. She gonna slit your fucking throat, though. So people let her get close. People say, well, what are you doing out here? And then blah, they get stabbed all of a sudden. She uses this surprise angle, which, again, a lot of people will call this the boring Friday the 13th film. Compared to some of the more kooky entries. Yeah, I mean, Jason Takes Manhattan is like batshit insane. That makes it fun. There's a lot to look at. It's batshit insane. This movie is not batshit insane. There are a lot of slow moments. There are a lot of pacing, but at least there's some logic. Like, he says, "Oh, hi, what are you doing out here?" And he starts walking toward his own killer. He doesn't suspect her. That's how Pamela is able to be successful murdering all of these people. It also feels like she's able to be in too many places at once, though. Like, in that very previous shot, she was at the entrance of the camp. She was right by the sign, right? That's where she was standing with her flashlight glaring at the camera. And then all of a sudden, the very next cut, she's entering this building to turn off the electricity, again, utilizing tactical advantages. And who knows? Maybe that was very close to the entrance where she just killed Homeboy. Homeboy in the yellow slicker who she just murdered, he's the guy who wanted to like reopen the camp or whatever. So really, that's the guy to kill. I'm not sure she should have killed all these young people who are undoubtedly making minimum wage, which in 1980 had to have been $1.25. I should look that up. I don't think it was $1.25, but it's definitely not that much money. I mean, these poor kids are just trying to get laid and smoke a doobie. I don't see why Pamela wants to murder them for that, but I guess they just should have the lifeguard. Kill all the lifeguards, but The arts and crafts lady, she wasn't even supposed to be watching your boy. Don't kill the arts and crafts lady. She had nothing to do with it.
You want me to come with you? Why don't you stay here and try and get some sleep?
Alice has just passed the fuck out. I don't know if that was just like a really fun game of Monopoly they were playing. Kind of pointless again. They're playing like strip Monopoly, which I don't even know how that would work. You're really pretty desperate to strip. If you're gonna like, well, we got Monopoly. We don't have cards. We can't play strip poker. So we gotta play strip Monopoly. That's what we're gonna play. I don't know. It's just a wild game of strip Monopoly. But apparently there's still Alice here and the other homeboy who just walked out are still unaware that there are murders occurring. They don't know where any of their friends are, but they're not aware that their friends are all dead because they're splitting up. Dude's like, well, I'll go try and turn the power back on, I guess, flip the breakers or whatever he's gonna about to try to do. But um, splitting up not a good idea. They always do that in the horror films. It's a bad idea. Typically, even when the killer is like some 6.5 foot tall maniac, if there's 3 or 4 or 5 of you, yeah, he's outside of one of your weight classes, but 3 or 4 or 5 of you all swinging heavy objects at his dome, one of y'all is going to crack his skull open and then, finish him up. They don't ever do that. These characters are never, I don't know, they're never aggressive enough. It's like all camp counselors in the 80s were just like total soy boys because they are just not fucking aggressive. They're like way too much estrogen in the soy that these guys are eating, which is weird because I don't think processed food was like they didn't have anywhere near as much processed food in 1980 as they do these days. These guys weren't eating Taco Bell fourth meal back then. So I don't know why they're such. I mean, these people ought to be like all like Gaston and Beauty and the Beast. I'm sorry, I have a 4-year-old. You get Disney references in these commentaries now, but they ought to be like pulling their shirts open with like chest hair and shit, and like oh my god, that dude looks like he's 35 and he's covered with hair, and he's like, yeah, well, I'm only 17 and a half, and I'm still covered with hair, and like just able to fight off the killers, but they never do. They're always like these, 170-pound like track star dudes who apparently did not do karate when they were kids. I guess we get down to our final two, and they're really trying to draw the suspense out, or they're really just trying to hit that runtime, that 84-minute runtime. You really got to hit 84 minutes. I don't know when that became a thing. That like 84 minutes is like the limit for feature film, and like if it's less than 84 minutes, you'll get sued for being I guess not a feature film, or you can't bill the piece of entertainment as a feature film if it's less than 84 minutes. I don't know. I should look that up to see if it's true, because it does feel at times. She's making coffee. What is that? What is that? That looks like fucking instant coffee. She just put 2 scoops. I hope she's making hot cocoa with that shit, and that's not instant coffee. Because I'm telling you one thing, instant coffee is disgusting. That hobo ought to still be in there. Like, cut to him. See, he's still in the pantry. He's like jerking off. That would be funny. Doesn't belong in this film. She like walks in there to get the fucking carnation powdered, cream or whatever, and he's Ralph, the death curse guy, is just furiously masturbating in the corner. That would be excellent, but not. I guess that would really kind of break up the suspense with a little bit too much humor. But it looks like she's making instant coffee, which disgusts me. And she's like, I'm still fixated on the fact that she didn't screw the lid back on. You see that right over her shoulder there? That lid is all wonky. You're going to grab that in the dark and it is going to come off and the bottle's going to fall and there's going to be fucking powdered coffee all over the floor. And you're going to be barefoot and you're going to be stepping in fucking ground up powdered coffee. And it's going to get in between your toes. And that is why you close the fucking lid, lady. Don't even drink instant coffee. You're at camp. I understand you might not have a Keurig You can't make a fucking coffee pod. That's fine. That coffee sucks too. You can do a fucking French press. Okay? Heat up some fucking water in the fucking tea kettle. Put your coffee grounds in the French press. Pour the hot water in. Count to 180. Press the thing. Pour the coffee. Drink good fucking coffee. You're about to be murdered. Oh, I love it. See, that's what I mean. You close the door. You don't know the corpse is there. We didn't know the corpse was there. That is, again, they're escalating things, right? It's not as good as the Kevin Bacon's death is probably the best death of this film. That's like over the top. That's really like, that's like the 5-tier wedding cake. That's just way over the top. Too much fondant. I like a little fondant, but too much fondant. That was an insane death. And again, in Halloween, you believe that Michael Myers can kind of like move a corpse around and position it, hang it up somewhere. He can do things because he's a young enough man with a large enough physique. But again, we're talking about 60-year-old Pamela Voorhees, how she got that guy to stick to the door. You know, you got to kill him, but then you got to like lift him up and like pin him to the door by like sticking stuff through him. It's not like hanging up a calendar on your wall, dog. That's hard work. Like you need several grown dudes to like one to hold the body up, two other ones to come around and stick stuff through the body into the door. And even then, I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to stay there. Suspend your disbelief. Here she is barricading herself in, which like sort of makes sense. Like, let's block the door. Cool. There's 10 fucking windows in that same cabin. So, you know, there's a forest filled with rocks and bricks and an axe that you could throw through the window. And if you're a murderous killer, that you could just climb right through any of those fucking windows. There's like 2 windows per wall, maybe 3 on the other wall. I mean, you could bust your ass like she's doing right now to barricade that door. Ain't nobody coming through that door. But there's 8 fucking windows. 18 fucking people could get in that cabin right now coming through the windows. Now, the baseball bat is smart. The baseball bat is smart. You're not holding it in a way that you could swing it. You know, you really got to get prepared. Get 2 hands on that baseball bat. Get it up in a ready position. You could do some damage with a baseball bat. Smart to arm yourself, but again, pointless if you're going to hold the thing like a goober. We're really down to our final girl here. I don't think there's anybody left alive in camp, but at least she knows she's being hunted now. And she responded very quickly. We didn't have a lot of time with her, huddled in a corner crying or something like that. It's always hard to watch when the character realizes that they're being hunted and they don't really act proactively. They just sort of see, that's what I'm talking about. Anybody could just go through a window. Throwing a corpse through the window is a great way to fuck with somebody. Again, Pamela's definitely calculating. She's doing that psychological. And why are you cowering in front of the window? She's doing the thing I was just talking about, where she, you sit there, you cower, you're traumatized. You're looking at your friend's corpse. You're feeling like you're alone. You might be next. You're probably going to be next. But then there's also that intense loss. This is a good friend, and they've been reduced to a pile of meat. And so it's very horrific for the character, but it's really hard for the audience to just watch this person react in such a way and not really be proactive in, prepare yourself, like get ready to fight. Don't go down without a fight. Even if you do get killed, like go out swinging. You know what I mean? Like respect yourself a little bit. Now she thinks the cavalry is here. She's saved, right? Car just pulled up. All of that like barricading that she just did is completely pointless. A, because of the windows. I've mentioned that ad nauseum. But if you're just going to remove the barrier, here we see Pamela for the first time.
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Doesn't she seem so nice?
No, no.
She says she's an old friend of the Christies being the folks who own Crystal Lake, the guy she just whacked, the guy in the rain slicker, the yellow rain slicker who she stabbed. That was one of the Christies. So she's not that great of friends with him if she's going to stab him. But she looks so normal. It's an older lady in a nice sweater. She's not even wet or spattered with blood, which you would expect her to be. If she just spent the day murdering like 7 of your friends, you have to expect her to be covered in rainwater because she was out in the rain killing homeboy in the slicker. Also have to expect that she would be covered in blood from like killing Kevin Bacon's character. I know she was like under the bed or whatever on the other side of the mattress, but there's no way all of that blood doesn't like bubble down and get on her hands, get on her. She's wearing a long sleeve sweater. It looks a little dirty, but she really would be like quite a mess unless she's got like a spare sweater in the back of that Jeep that she just put on, which is possible, but even still, like, wouldn't it be in her hair? Wouldn't it be under her fingernails? I mean, there would be a lot of physical evidence, even if she changed sweaters, that she just spent the day murdering.
The year before those 2 others were killed.
And she just starts talking crazy, so at least she doesn't try to play it off for too long. But she does present a very, a very motherly visage. She does look like she should be baking cookies and not murdering people all day. Again, she was the cook.
Every minute he was.
All of her dialogue is basically just exposition after the fact. It's like post hoc exposition, which is kind of nice. It's sort of like debt, right? Like I'm going to buy a thing using a credit card. So it feels like I paid for the thing, but then I didn't really. I used someone else's money that they extended to me via a line of credit. Then I've got to repay the people after the fact. They're going to send me a credit card bill. And that's sort of this. It's like we don't know why the killer's been killing. There's a lot of exposition to this film that was skipped over. We put it off to the end.
Where's Mr. Christie?
Jason's birthday is June the 13th. Is that what she just said? That's interesting to keep in mind. I'm sure there's some trivia. There's some website somewhere, some wiki that has that listed. I just haven't read that page yet because I'm not a fucking nerd.
My only child.
I mean, how would you feel? I mean, as a parent, it's like I'm watching this as a kid and I don't really get it. Like I can't put myself in her shoes. But as a parent, it's like I'm a parent now. I got a couple kids. If somebody fucked with your kids, it's completely understandable that you would behave in irrational ways if you thought people were fucking with your kid. Also, fireplace poker to the back. 60-year-old lady. I don't know. Maybe she's not 60, but she's probably pushing it. If the character was working at Camp Crystal Lake 20 years ago and had a young boy 20 years ago. Okay, maybe she's 50 instead of 60. Regardless, 50-year-old put a fireplace poker across their back. This is again like she staged this. There's like a corpse falling out of a tree right as Alice runs by, but he's still hanging there. It's like, how does the 50-year-old, 60-year-old lady get the corpse up into the tree? How does she rig it so that like the corpse falls down? Don't think about any of that. It's really not something you're supposed to wonder. It's really just for us as the audience to like see this aftermath. That's kind of a cool shot too. We see Alice recede into the darkness where it's not a very detailed shot. It's dark. You don't get any like, it's not like a lot of these shots at night in these more recent films, they'll still light it and you'll wonder like, where the fuck is this light supposed to be coming from? I know that ain't the moon. I can see every detail in that goddamn tree. It's supposed to be 2 a.m. That was a really pretty majestic shot where Alice is wearing this very light colored shirt and she's running into the woods. She's trying to escape. And that's really all you see is just like her upper body, her torso. Everything else is darkness. It's really pretty wonderful shot. Again, using lighting sparingly, but to good effect. Um, we see there too that Mrs. Voorhees is just insane. She's just crazy. She's speaking to herself in her son's persona, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a reverse Psycho type of thing, where Norman Bates sort of had this split dual personality, and one of those personalities was his mother, Norma, and that's the personality that did all of the killing. Um, Here, it's the Jason personality. I don't know if she does have a split personality, if she's schizophrenic, what's happening, but it certainly seems to be that she has this split personality. And one of those personalities is her son, who's begging her for revenge. Don't let her live. Kill her, mommy. And so you get the idea that she's very mentally ill, but she's acting in a way that is meant to avenge her son. Even after the fireplace poker across the back, I don't know, man. And she's just smacking the shit out of Alice. I like how she's like, she slits everyone else's throat. She's just like open hand smacking Alice in the face. I mean, not even punching her. Did she just take that? Okay, so Alice obviously tried to arm herself with a gun. Apparently, she couldn't get the bullets fast enough. But I think she did just use the butt of the gun to hit Pamela Voorhees in the vagina. I think she just did like a vagina tap with the butt of the gun, which is excellent if that's the case. I think we should all pause, rewind, watch that part again to see if she really just got her in the vagina with the butt of the rifle. Here, look how well lit that is. Why would it be this well lit? That's not the moon. Look at the position of the lighting. Look at the way that lighting is shining in. That's not the fucking moon, although she turned the electricity back on. So maybe that's just some external lights that are positioned around the camp. That's what we're going to choose to believe. That it's not some giant fucking floodlight that they set up so that you can actually see what's happening in the shot. There's always a practical reason. You know what I mean? There's always some reason that expedites the film and allows us to understand what's happening on screen. It's not an art film after all. It's not Stan Brakhage directing this. This really kind of casts Pamela as a complete loon, which makes you wonder how she functioned for the last 20 years since her original murders. Really is, it's kind of wild to think that she's just been out there in the world, like acting normal. Here's your friend. It's a nice shot to show this kind of grief over the friend who is dead. But Alice has to kind of keep moving. She feels this grief, but she's got to keep moving because it's the only way she's going to stay alive. There's this sort of cat and mouse, very strong, like will to live. Although she did that thing they often do in horror films, where like you hit the person who's trying to the killer, the murderer, you hit him in the vagina with the butt of a gun, and then you hit him again, maybe in the head, and they fall down. And instead of like hitting them in the head until they die, because you hit someone in the head enough times or hard enough, and you crack their skull and they die when you like actually beat their head like Gallagher does a watermelon. Instead of doing that, she squanders that temporary advantage and like runs away. Gives Pamela Voorhees time to like kind of get up and start pursuing again. Always do that in horror films. And again, it's like that soy boy shit. I know this is a girl, so it's like, yeah, she's a girl, yeah, okay. She doesn't have that killer instinct, but come on, man. This person's trying to fucking murder you. There's no one here to help you. You've knocked them down temporarily. They are defenseless for the next 15 seconds or so. You need to finish them. And that's what I'm going to teach my daughters. I told you guys I'm a parent. I got 2 daughters. I am definitely going to teach them kids. Like, you hit the murderer lady in the vagina and then hit her in the head and she falls over. Don't you run away. That's where you finish the drill. You get that butt of that rifle and you just Mash that up like Gallagher did. Remember we watched Gallagher on YouTube, honey, when he got the mallet and he smashed a watermelon? That's what you do to that person's head. And that's how you guys ought to raise your children. I don't know if you guys are parents out there, but if you are, definitely gotta really teach the kids. You don't do that indiscriminately, but when it's Pamela Voorhees, hit her in the vagina and then bash her head in. That's really some pretty good acting. I gotta admit, like that look on her face was like entirely unhinged. But there was nuance there. It's like crazy. She's insane. She's murderous. But there was also like this momentary look of triumph in her eyes. Like, yeah, I got you. I got you cornered. You know what I mean? Like when she locked eyes with Alice through the door. Again, another really kind of wonderful shot. If this movie was just a carbon copy of Halloween, it really doesn't offer anything to us. I don't think it would have been as successful as it was, and I don't think it would be remembered today the way it is. So I think we do have to, we have to agree that this film is derivative of Halloween and that they admit, the filmmakers admit that they made this in response to Halloween because they wanted to make money like John Carpenter had done with Halloween. Respect for admitting that. But then let's also agree that there was some effort put into this film and that there is a little bit of artistry. Like the performers are performing. They know that it's a Halloween copy, but they're also trying to make a name for themselves. And there are some really cool and effective shots in this film that are really quite like memorable and like artistically composed, and I appreciate it. And here we get this is a total chick fight, right? Like if you paid $90 for the pay-per-view to watch this shit on UFC, you'd be rip shit. You'd be demanding your money back. You'd say, what the fuck is this shit? I paid $90. First of all, I paid for the ESPN Plus app. That's $60 a year. Then I paid $90 to see this. They're like pulling each other's hair and clawing each other. I gotta say, Pamela Voorhees definitely has a little bit more of a killer instinct going. She's trying to like bash the head and choke old Alice over here, but she did lose control of the machete. I love the slow motion here. This is sort of the killer instinct finally came out on Alice. Alice is the aggressor. It's the only time that Alice actually looks like the headless stump and the hands are clasping. She's still on her feet and it's slow motion. For me, when I was 8 and I'm looking at this, I'm like, holy shit. Like 8-year-old Jason was losing his fucking shit at that shot right there. That's incredible. Great shot. Slow motion, love it. And I also love that Alice only wins when she finally gets that killer instinct and she aggresses, right? This whole time she's been trying to run, hide, barricade herself behind a door, get behind something, be real quiet, shh. But then she finally sees an advantage. She sees the machete, she grabs it, and then instead of running away like she has been, she advances toward Pamela Voorhees. And Pamela Voorhees is just getting back up to her feet. It is completely unfair, right? She didn't wait for Pamela to get ready and square up. She aggressed, and it was effective. Look, guys, that's what you need to do. Use your advantage and aggress. And then she falls asleep, and we wake up, and the next morning, look how tranquil that lake is. That lake, all of the murderous, that violence of Mother Nature has now been completely calmed. We see this calm lake and really a beautiful imagery that we weren't seeing this beautiful imagery earlier in these establishing shots because it was like shit was about to go down. We got to show you the trees are blowing around. Here it's like this beautiful reflection of these trees. Kind of the only shot where we see that they're actually filmed this during the fall. They filmed this in September. See the trees there that are like starting to turn. You can't really, they did a good job of like for their tighter shots, like not getting any of the orange and red trees. But here with the wide shot, it's hard not to get like the orange and red trees. Here's the music. The music has changed too. It's not a suspenseful music anymore. It's not It's not. This is not a track that's filled with dread. We see the cop there, and the cop's watching. Right. So does the cop see this? Does the cop actually? Is the police officer actually witnessing this? Now, Alice taking the canoe out to the lake. A lot of people are like, why the fuck did she do that? But it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, she had been under attack, and she wanted to be able to see someone coming. So if you're out in the lake, like, you're going to see someone coming, unless they're a weird undead preteen who leaps from the lake looking like a zombie. That's kind of a horrific effect too. You know, this drowned corpse of Jason drags her back down and into the lake. Really great. They really should have ended the film right there. That's the cut to credits that leaves things open, ambiguous, and hanging. They really should not have included this particular scene where she wakes up, she's in the hospital. That sequence that we just witnessed was totally in her head, which, you know, makes sense based on what she's been through, but at the same time, it tells us that she's safe. As the audience, we're not worried about her anymore. The cliffhanger, that weird cliffhanger, is now undermined, I guess. They took that back. That would have been a great kind of cliffhanger ending, set us up for number two. Like, maybe there is this weird spirit to Jason that was like propelling Pamela. Maybe it wasn't just her psychosis. Maybe there's like something supernatural happening that was like pushing her to kill, that Jason acted through these people. And so they really could have built on that instead of making Jason this sort of like feral redneck monster tard. They could have made it like this almost like spiritual, like paranormal compulsion, and it could have infected people, starting with Pamela, but then this trauma, as it occurs, it infects people. You can see that she's shaken by her experience. You know, she's a survivor, but she's not intact. And she says the boy is still out there. That must mean that little boy is still out there. Jason's corpse is still in the lake. It's never been recovered. I can't imagine. It's not a huge lake. I don't know why they never found it, but you know, that is I guess it's a decent enough setup to say that Jason's still out there. It's a decent enough setup for number two, but of course they didn't know that there would be sequels when they made this. When they wrote that and filmed that, they didn't know that this was going to be successful enough to spawn an entire franchise. So I think the smart move would have been to end it with the ambiguous scene of the zombie Jason dragging Alice into the lake. That would have been a great place to end it. Even still, that hospital scene is weird enough that, you know, is the whole thing occurring in her mind. She's obviously been traumatized, PTSD, makes perfect sense. But, you know, it's enough to say that she survived, but not fully. You know, there's something wrong with Alice now. And again, like I said, the idea of Jason being this sort of almost like this allegorical curse, that could have worked for sequels as well, because I do think they have some fun with the next couple of sequels, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they bang these next couple of sequels out over the next couple of years. 81, 82, 83, they boom boom boom, they banged them out. But it, you know, I think they did kind of like get themselves into a little bit of a corner by presenting Jason as like this flesh and blood dude who really exists, but then, you know, also he's got to be even more murderous than his own mother. You know, you can do that for a couple of sequels, but how do you continue to keep that fresh? I think they did kind of get themselves in a little trouble, and I think that's why this franchise has never really been what it was in the early to mid 80s. And after the mid 80s, it kind of peaked right there with number 4, and then everything else has just been kind of the other side of that crest. Short credits there. And that is the film. Hopefully, if you're watching this on your Blu-ray at home, you're seeing the Paramount Mountain just fade into this logo here. And let's dump that. Wow, that was way too close. You know what I mean? If you're watching the video. If you're watching the video, I want to say thank you very much. Thanks for watching this. If you're watching it live on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're a patron, double thank you for watching this uncovered, unedited, raw on Patreon. You can do so by visiting patreon.com/teamalmy, teamalmy.com/support. They take you to the same page. I very much appreciate my patrons. I love you guys very much. If you were near me, I would put my arm around you tenderly, pull you close, firm, but again, gentle. Kiss on the mouth. Yep. I would tuck you in like Pamela lovingly tucked in that axe that she used to murder those poor teenagers. That was weird and gross, but it's again, it's Friday the 13th. I hate to let a Friday the 13th in October pass us by without a live stream of a Friday the 13th film. So if you haven't already, please feel free to revisit my my commentary of Friday the 13th part 4. Again, that's probably one of the ones I like to revisit a little bit more, but we've already done that one. And 6 hasn't come out on Steelbook yet, so I haven't bought it yet. So I'm weird. Whatever. It is what it is. The first one though is good. Watching it again now with you guys, with you people, has given me a little bit more to appreciate, particularly with some of the visuals. Some of the shots really are quite nice and even semi-artistic, and the performances again maybe a little ham, especially on Pamela Voorhees, but believable, effective. I gotta say, old Betsy Palmer, you done good, Betsy Palmer. This was not bad at all. So look, I hope everybody else has also gained a little bit of appreciation for the very first Friday the 13th film. This is the film that set them all off. This is the one that lit the powder keg. And part 2, part 3, part 4, part 6, where he's a weird zombie. We have this film to thank for all of that bounty of terrible horror films. So again, thank you very much for joining me for this commentary. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found some value in me saying the F word during this movie a bunch of times. We'll see you next time. We're going to do a movie mass a little closer to Halloween. We're going to do Werner Herzog's Nosferatu. So later this month, we're going to watch Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, 1979 remake of the 1922 classic. Both films, classic films, but I do love Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, probably more than I should. We're going to watch that together in English. We're going to watch the English language version of that film for reasons that I will elucidate when we sit down to watch that film. So check out this very YouTube channel in another week and a half. We'll get a little closer to Halloween before we do that. And I got production. To do. I got to produce this shit. No low effort content here. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this YouTube page. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to the RSS, what are you doing? Subscribe to this podcast. I love you people. Have a great evening, and be safe out there on Friday the 13th. Don't go out drinking tonight. It's amateur night, so stay in, stay safe. Watch the shit show and movie mass. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.